following interview is sponsored by Lakeland Resources, Inc. Lakeland Resources is a newly formed pure-play uranium exploration company focused on the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan, Canada. Visit lakelandresources.com for more information.
On the line with us today is returning guest and a good friend of mine, Jeb Handwerger. Jeb is the publisher of Gold Stock Trades newsletter. Jeb, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Colin. Great to be here.
Last time we spoke was in early November, and our focus lied in the uranium sector. You called for a potential major rally in uranium stocks with a particular focus towards the Athabasca Basin. Wow, were you right? In light of clear fundamentals for a major upturn in the uranium market, what are the charts telling you today?
Well, Colin, the charts are telling me that we are turning the corner here. Momentum is improving. We're seeing, from a technical perspective, the charts improving to some of the best charts that I've seen in looking at charts for over 20 years. We see bases, we see breakouts, we see high volume coming in, which indicates that the smart money, the funds, are coming into the space. We're seeing this after a 3-year correction. We're seeing this where gold was knocked down from $1,900 to $1,200, and now we've been basing and just beginning to turn the corner. This reminds me a lot of when I first came into the junior sector in the late 90s. The charts looked very similar to what I saw back then, where you had these long bases and bullish crossovers at exceptionally low prices and great values. When you look at the balance sheets of some of the companies that are in the sectors that I follow, which is the gold and silver and uranium and the commodity sectors. So this is an excellent time for investors to see that there's a turn coming, to get positioned. Uranium, the charts, many have doubled. Even though the Uranium Participation Corp, which is a proxy for the uranium spot price, even though that's just broken out into new 2-year highs and it's only up 5% this year, some of these uranium stocks are up 100% this year. And that's the leverage that you get in the junior sector. And especially in the uranium sector, which was beaten down for so long. I mean, you had everyone against the uranium sector after Fukushima. No one wanted to touch the sector for a couple of years. I mean, at PDAC a couple of years ago, I was the only newsletter writer that continued to highlight about the uranium sector. Well, now, 2 years later, Japan's turning back on the nuclear reactors. We're seeing new reactors, U.S. reactors, for the first time in 30 years. We're seeing the Russian HEU agreement expire. We have unrest in places like Ukraine and possibly Kazakhstan, where a large amount of supply of uranium. There's a potential here for uranium price spike. And if you take a look at the long-term charts on some of these uranium stocks that went up high in the previous cycle, the juniors, some of them went up 500–600%, while the uranium price went up 100–200%. So that is where uranium investors who study the history, they understand that at all of these, that there can be very explosive moves to the upside. It happened in 2007. It could be happening. What the charts may be telling us in the uranium miners, like we're seeing the breakout throughout the Athabasca Basin, and a lot of these junior uranium miners that are either coming to production or near-term producers and even explorers in the Athabasca Basin, what this is telling me is that smart money is positioning themselves for a potential price spike, and all the fundamentals are there, Colin. And that's why investors who have not yet exposed themselves to the uranium space, I know it was very difficult a couple of months ago to understand the story because the charts weren't looking as positive now, but now we're seeing an explosive move, and which I think is just the beginning if you look at the historical long-term charts.
I want to bring up a point that I touched on in our last interview, and that's that the commodity sector in general is quite small by market cap when compared to other sectors like, say, finance or transportation. And if you add the market cap together of every publicly listed gold mining company, it's a relatively small number. But if you add the market cap together of every publicly listed uranium company, the market cap is tiny, especially today. We're talking the realm of maybe $100 billion for a sector that fuels 13% of the world's electricity. And that right there is why I love investing in uranium stocks, because as you just described, when money rushes in, the moves are spectacular in size and very fast. I know you've written about the potential outsized moves, and you've just talked about it a bit, but touch on this a bit more for our listeners, just why the moves in uranium can be so fast and so big.
Yeah, I'm glad you touch on this point because the uranium space was small, has generally always been small, but now it's even smaller. For instance, a couple of years ago, Rio Tinto outbid Cameco for Hathor. Fission, the J Zone was acquired by Denison. Then the spin out of Fission acquired Alpha. Then Energy Fuels acquired merged with Strathmore. Then Uranium One, which was one of the largest publicly traded uranium stocks, was acquired by the Russians, by Rosatom. And the list just goes on and on. And right now, there's very few high-quality assets that investors can expose themselves to this sector. When this uranium, for instance, the uranium mining ETF, there's one in the U.S., URA, and when that goes up, you can see that all the stocks make significant moves and outsized moves to that uranium ETF. But there's just so few, and you're having right now the beginnings of all this capital, all this cash on the sidelines, all these utilities coming back in to an extremely depressed sector that there's very few capabilities for funds to get in, and that's when you get these sort of explosive moves. And on top of that, Colin, you have a large short position on some of these junior uranium miners, and some of them that are even coming into production and generating cash flow and that have contracts and offtake agreements with some of the largest utilities in the U.S. So you're going to have short covering on top of this. And that's why, again, you can see in a 2-month period from the last time we spoke, we see moves in some of the companies, the junior uranium miners that I've spoken about on my website, make doubles or 150% in 2 months. This could be just the beginning once people understand that uranium is in a supply shortfall as we speak.
Here's what I find amazing. You mentioned gains of 100% for many of the juniors in uranium just this year. I've even seen gains of 200% for a couple uranium stocks in the past 2 months. The spot price uranium has not even moved yet. It's still at $35 a pound. With that being said, let's talk about some specific companies. Last time you brought up Lakeland Resources. In the past 52 weeks, the company's stock price has seen gains of 500 or 600%. Management seems to be making all the right moves, and the Zim2 group's behind this one, which excites me because they're some of the best guys in the sector when it comes to investor communication and getting the story out there. What's going on with Lakeland? Give us an update.
Well, Lakeland has a JV partner, Declan, on their Gibbons Creek property, which is drill ready. They're one of the most active ones. Jody DeRouge is active in that. He's well known in the Athabasca Basin. One of the major shareholders and behind Strathmore and the original Fission. So they have the management team that can make a discovery. They have a JV partner that's helping fund, and they're going to probably be one of the most active explorers in an area of the basin that has been underexplored. We have the east side, the Denison's making a huge discovery with their Phoenix deposit, the Phoenix discovery at at the Wheeler River deposit. Then you have on the west side, you have Fission making the Patterson Lake South discovery, and NextGen also announcing a recent discovery at their Arrow prospect. And then you have Lakeland, which is in the northern part, which has been underexplored, but has a well-funded partner, and they're also they have the capability, because of what you said before, their marketing and knowing how to outreach to new investors. They have the ability to raise funds to potentially acquire other assets that are still depressed.
Another one you mentioned to me before the call is U308 Corp. 62 million pounds of uranium across 3 deposits, very low market cap. The company just 2 weeks ago announced a $1 million private placement that was oversubscribed within a week. Is this a great optionality play on the price of uranium moving forward?
Yeah, this has a large resource base. They have a large resource base in South America. They have near-term production in Argentina. Some people may be a little bit nervous with Argentina with the recent disagreements with the U.S. and some of the gold and silver, but uranium is a strategic asset for them. They already have an agreement in place. There's a potential here for near-term production, and again, it's extremely undervalued at 3-year lows, and the company appears to be at a turning point, making a bullish golden crossover of the 50 and 200 day with major volume coming in now that they just completed a oversubscribed private placement. And this is how fast these markets turn. A couple of months ago, the company, there was concerns, would they be able to be financed now? And going into 2014, there's a pickup in the uranium, the uranium sector, and they had an oversubscribed private placement, which will help them advance the Laguna Salada project, which is a near-surface uranium vanadium deposit that has the potential to be possibly a low-cost producer. So you should hear a lot of activity out of them in 2014.
Can you talk to our listeners about some other uranium companies that you're following at the moment?
Well, we like the near-term producers in the U.S. One of the companies that we think is a near-term producer that should announce news of production, and that's surrounded by Cameco and Uranium One in Wyoming, is Your Honor's Energy, which I've been talking about for years. They're finally coming into production. They have off-takes with some of the largest U.S. utilities, and they have a processing agreement with Cameco, and they may be a potential acquisition target. Another way we like investing this sector outside of the Athabasca Basin, because the Athabasca Basin is still at the exploration stage, we like these large advanced deposits that have a large resource that's already there and that's undervalued. A couple of companies that have these large resources, one in Australia is Laramide Resources, which can be traded as LAM on the Toronto Stock Exchange, which has 50 million pounds of uranium. And we also like up in Canada, the Elliott Lake region, which has a large uranium base, millions of pounds of uranium at the that may be soon entering the feasibility stage, and they also have the potential to have a byproduct of the rare earths.
One more company to touch on that you put a write-up on last week is Ucore Rare Metals. It's not exactly a uranium play, but it's just gotten a huge endorsement by the Alaska government. Can you talk to our listeners about Ucore?
Yeah, and the importance of this is that the importance of checking out geopolitical support. For a couple of years, Ucore was not followed by the mainstream investor. It is the highest grade heavy rare earth asset in the U.S. In Alaska. The Alaska state government has just proposed to help finance the project. The capex, the construction cost, up to $145 million. it's a huge vote of confidence in the project. It's a huge vote of confidence in the management team and for the entire rare earth sector, where they will need some sort of government support to help fund and to bring down the costs to get independence of these critical metals that are needed in the latest military technologies and all these high-tech applications. And it could be potentially a huge economic boom to Southeast Alaska, in creating jobs and for hopefully making the U.S. independent of the heavy rare earths, which is 100%, close to 100% controlled by the Chinese right now. And the tensions between China and the U.S. are probably the worst that they've been in many years.
Jeb, on that note, thanks so much for taking the time today. We'll have to reconvene in a couple months, and I expect that these uranium stocks might be quite a bit higher than they even are today, and that'll be very exciting. Talk to you soon, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Colin, for having me here today, and I'm so excited for 2014, and it's been great to see a rebound in the sectors that we followed for so long.